Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
The land down under has never been easier to reach. United Airlines has more flights between the U.S. and Australia than any other U.S. airline, so you can fly nonstop to destinations like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Explore dazzling cities, savor the very best of Aussie cuisine, and get up close and personal with the wildlife. Who doesn't want to hold a koala? Go to united.com/Australia to book your adventure.
At the end of every episode, I say, if you've got a question about the weird things kids do, send an email for a chance to hear your voice on the show. As an aside, it turns out that my request totally reveals my age and I'm a little embarrassed. I said to send me an email, and I do get a few emails, but mostly I get direct messages on Instagram. I know when my daughter meets someone new, she's a little older, they exchange Instagram names instead of phone numbers, and my son exchanges Discord contacts. So it's probably time for me to change my request. Nevertheless, as promised, today is the day I share listener questions and my answers to them. I'm Dr. Wendy Hunter, and I'm the pediatrician next door. I'm that doctor friend you call for practical advice about your kid's health. I mix the science of medicine with the reality of parenting. Being a parent is a vulnerable position. There is not always a right answer for what to do in any situation, and sometimes we make mistakes. We often second guess ourselves, and it's not like the stakes are low. I mean, what is more important than raising a healthy, well-adjusted kid? It's really hard to find the balance between not screwing them up and staying sane ourselves. Probably the easiest part of parenting is taking care of kids' physical health. There are some right ways to do things to keep their bodies healthy, so I'm going to start there. One of my more popular episodes was episode 28. It was called Preventing Colds and Flus with Supplements, What Works? And after that episode was released, I got a few good questions about other ways to prevent illness. This question was from Joanna G. She said, how do you feel about the new RSV vaccine? Love it or leave it? And then she went on to say, my daughter was born at 32 weeks and spent a long time in the NICU. She's healthy now, but I'm very germ cautious from the experience, and I am pro-vaccine. So if there's enough positive data, I would feel good about giving it to her. She's a daycare kid now, and those toddlers are gross. Okay, here's my answer. At the time, Beyfortus was brand new, and we didn't have a lot of experience with this RSV immunoglobulin. Plus, it was really difficult to get doses in our clinic. So my response was, I said to her, I think it's going to be very effective at preventing really bad respiratory illnesses and deaths under age 6 months. I would definitely get it if I had a new baby at home and if I had a toddler bringing home germs from preschool. But I think parents are going to feel really uncomfortable about this not being a vaccine and being an immunoglobulin instead. So we'll see if anybody's going to use it. In the end, at my clinic, we had a lot of parents requesting it. And as I said, we had very few doses. So going into next season, and it's interesting, we actually do define an RSV season. In fact, infectious disease specialists announce the first and the last day based on the rate of infections they're seeing in the community. And that defines when we give either the RSV vaccine or this new antibody for RSV called Beyfortus. Now, we have data from this last season, and my answer to Joanna's question is this. I love it. I did not see any side effects in patients in my clinic who got Beyfortus, and it was so effective at preventing respiratory syncytial virus-related hospitalizations in my babies. The CDC surveillance analysis for last year said that a single dose of Beyfortus was 90% effective at preventing RSV hospitalizations in kids who were immunized before their first RSV season. In France, they found that Beyfortus was 83% effective. So this is a pretty good thing to give your kid. And Beyfortus is an antibody. It's not a vaccine. So it's a lot like giving a baby mom's antibodies when she's pregnant. Babies carry the same immunity as their mothers until they're about 6 months old when they start to lose those antibodies. The RSV monoclonal antibody injection, called Beyfortus, is a great way to prevent illness for kids under 1. Okay, I got one more quick question based on this episode that I did about preventing illness, and it was from Allison Y. She said, do you have a recommendation for a good Echinacea supplement for kids? And yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I explained in that episode that when viruses get in your nose, there are a few treatments that can prevent a virus from getting into the body's cells. And one of those treatments is Echinacea, also known as purple coneflower. I mentioned a study that was done to evaluate whether Echinacea prevented virus infections, but the researchers also investigated whether it prevented them from having a complication from an infection, like getting an ear infection or pneumonia. So the researchers gave vitamin C to one group of kids and Echinacea to another group. There were about 100 kids in each group. The kids taking Echinacea had about a third the number of respiratory illnesses as the vitamin C group, and they had far fewer ear infections and pneumonia, and they needed antibiotics much less. So Echinacea seems to prevent kids from getting sick from viruses. However, it's important to know which product they took, and that's what Allison Y was asking. They took Echinoforce Junior chewable tablets by the Vogel company. I love when my episodes inspire parents to ask more questions about the topic, but even better is when parents ask me a question that is very vulnerable, one that's difficult to ask. And here's a question I got from a listener. How do I help my child who I think is severely obese? Okay, here's my answer. I wrote to her this. Great question, very complex answer. How old is he? Any underlying health issues? If he's just a regular old kid, the answer is to model a healthy lifestyle. Don't have junk food or soda in the house. Make sure he's involved in some kind of physical activity. In our clinic, we have a really great health coaching program for kids, so maybe ask your pediatrician if they have something like that. I really appreciate that this mother asked this question because, again, there's a fine balance here. As a parent, you want your child to feel loved and not criticized. So you don't want to tell your kid that you think they're overweight. But at the same time, this is a health concern. We know that increased adiposity or excess body fat leads to a number of cardiometabolic consequences and diseases down the road. I did an episode on intuitive eating, and that can be an answer for some kids. There's a book that can help you learn this system of eating, and that can be helpful to manage weight concerns. It's called A Parent's Guide to Intuitive Eating, How to Raise Kids Who Love to Eat Healthy. And it was written by Dr. Yami Cazorla Lancaster. I also like the book Nourish, the definitive plant-based nutrition guide for families with tips and recipes for bringing health, joy, and connection to your dinner table. That is a very long title. Anyway, the author is Reshma Shah and Brenda Davis. The other book I like is Plant-Based Juniors, and they have a website as well. I'll put all those links in the show notes, and you can find them on my website. Other options for this mom are just to know that pediatricians can help her. She needs to find one that is not judgmental and can be supportive and provide resources. Locally in my town, our gastroenterology specialists, they offer a course for families to help manage weight concerns. And there are also a number of registered dietitians that can help. You can search the web for those or ask your pediatrician for recommendations.
How do you feel great on vacation? Like really good? Easy. You go to Aruba. You'll spend your time relaxing on cool white sand beaches and floating in healing blue water. You'll immerse yourself in natural wonder and find your center on an island where things move at your speed. You won't just feel great, you'll feel relaxed, renewed, and ready for life. That's the Aruba effect. Plan your trip at Aruba.com.
Let's get a little lighter here. Like I said, I get questions when parents aren't really sure where else they should turn. And this is actually a question I get from my own patients all the time, and I don't really know the answer to. Here it is. Mackenzie R. wrote this to me. Hey, my 3-month-old has both big toenails super ingrown. His pediatrician didn't have much to say, so I took him to a podiatrist, and he said put him on an antibiotic to help the irritation and the infection, and then clip down the toenails in his sleep while also soaking in Epsom salts a few times a week. I'm nervous to put antibiotic in his gut. Do you have recommendations on how to support him if I do decide to do that, or any other ideas for my situation? Yes, this is a surprisingly common problem at this age. Young babies do get ingrown toenails all the time. It's crazy. I tell parents to kind of like stroke and rub the skin away from the edge of the nail right after the bath, and then put on an antibiotic ointment and cover it with a sock. You don't want to cut the nails too short because sometimes that's what makes them get stuck under the skin. I've honestly never seen an infant that needed to take an oral antibiotic because of their infection, so I found that a little bit odd. I followed up recently and I asked Mackenzie how it went, and here's what she said. She wrote, hey, here are the things that helped. Pulling skin back a little after the bath helped, and then trimming the nail, using antibiotic ointment, Epsom salt soaks, and then she used Redmond clay overnight. She said, this was amazing, drew out the infection. And her final note was active skin repair spray multiple times a day. And she said, I will also note I was consistent in all of these things for a week, but also I gave it a whole week of doing nothing and not bothering it, which helped it air out and not be irritated. It went a few months being fine, but then started to get infected again. Now I know how to help it. And I think it started because I didn't keep the nail trimmed low enough, so it got long, and then it started to curl and grow into the skin. I love that she found active skin repair spray. That is one of my favorite products. This stuff is amazing. It's made from hypochlorous acid, which sounds dangerous, but is totally safe. It's the substance that our white blood cells make naturally to fight off fungal, bacterial, and viral infections. And now it's available in a spray. So keep this in your bag and spray every owie with it. And she mentioned Redmond clay, which I don't know a lot about, but studies have shown that some of these clays work well as antibacterials. So this is definitely something I should explore in a future episode. Send me a message if you know anything about this. And that reminds me that a number of listeners have taught me about their own expertise. If you want to be amused, check out some of my Instagram reels where some people can be quite opinionated. Here's a response from a very kind pediatric physical therapist and listener named Jill, who responded after listening to episode 62, which is called Why Do Kids Walk That Way? In this episode, I interviewed an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Reed Nichols at Nemours Children's Health. And we talked about when it's okay for kids to have bow legs, flat feet, toe walking, and like frequent tripping. We also talked about why toddlers fall and when to worry about pigeon toes and knock knees. So here's what Jill sent me. Hi, Dr. Hunter, pediatric physical therapist here. Love the podcast from May 1st about ortho issues. Just wanted to chime in about W sitting. Not all PTs are opposed. I tell parents, 1, if they easily transition in and out of it, that it is not a big deal. Number 2, the reason we would be concerned is that W sitting provides a very wide base of support and doesn't allow for much trunk rotation. So the kids are not giving their body a chance to improve core strength, although this could be a chicken or egg situation. So if they are W sitting the majority of the time, and especially if there are developmental concerns in the first place, get the child to transition to other positions like a long sit, side sit, tall kneel, sit on heels, or crisscross if they are able to. This gives them natural opportunities to improve core strength. Thanks for all you do to help educate us. Thanks, Jill. I've actually been chatting with her, and she's going to be a guest on an upcoming episode. So send me any questions you want to ask a pediatric physical therapist. Here's your chance. One thing that we might want to talk about with her is head shape. A lot of parents are concerned about that. And also parents are concerned about the size of their kid's head. Here's a question I got from Caitlin L. How concerned should I be if my son's head circumference is in the 8th percentile at his 2-month visit? Google is making me worried, but his doctor said everything looks great. I read scary stuff about developmental delays, but he has been hitting his milestones, so I was hoping he's okay. All right, here's how I answered her. This is what I shared. The most important thing is the trend on his growth chart. The measurements should show some kind of a smooth line along the growth curve, although there aren't that many points at a 2-month visit. As long as your baby's head is on the chart, I don't think you need to worry. I'd like to add that a lot of babies are at a single percentile when they're born, but by the time they're 6 months old, they usually find a new spot on the curve. Their percentiles in the first few months reflect things like the size of the uterus, the size of the umbilical cord. And then once they're like 6 months old, their genetics take over and they find their natural place on the curve. So this mom needs to give it a little bit more time. And I should check back in with her. We look at trends and we also look at the family and remember pretty much everything on the curve is normal. And sometimes even being a little bit over the curve is okay too. You know those families that have big heads, right? I'll also note that Google made her nervous, so be careful about information you find on the internet. Speaking of Google, another mother had advice on that after her experience. It started with her sending me a note about a reel that I did based on episode 58, which was a really good episode that I did called The Long and Short of It, Penis Problems and Dental Anesthesia. Okay, no, those two topics are not related. I just had a lot to say about both issues, so I put them together. You know, I have my own show. I can do whatever I want. Anyway, I presented the case of a child who died from anesthesia, and that was done in a dental office. And I talked about how to choose an appropriate sedation team if your child needs dental work. So here's what Samantha G. and I talked about. She sent me this. Just saw your video on pediatric anesthesiologists. My son is 5 and he's undergoing dental surgery in June under general anesthesia. This is taking place in a hospital with the hospital anesthesiologists. They won't know who my son's doctor will be until the day of. Should I still be concerned about them being pediatric specialists if they are in a hospital setting? So I responded to her by reassuring that this sounds safe and to go ahead. But then she wrote back to me and said this. Hi. So I actually got so freaked out that general anesthesia was too much for dental surgery and I canceled the entire thing. Then my son ended up getting a dental infection in a tooth they had filled, and now he's rescheduled for next month. So she went on to say this too. If I had any advice for parents, it would be to stay off of Google for any upcoming surgery. Also, I want you to acknowledge that a possibility is not a probability. To quantify risk, my son's pediatrician helped me greatly. He said, mountain climbing is inherently risky, but with the right tour guide and equipment, your chances of it being successful are much higher. The same can be said about flying in an airplane or riding in a car. With the right experience, equipment, and knowledge, the risk is substantially lower. And the same can be said about general anesthesia. Ultimately, staying off of Google would be the number one piece of advice. Everyone has said that knowledge will ease your worries. If you know more about it, the better. I definitely took that and went down some very scary rabbit holes of information. Instead, I'd encourage parents to get information from their existing providers. I called the hospital and they walked me through the steps from arrival to finish, which has helped me prepare myself and my son. I was told to write down any questions I might have for the anesthesiologist, which helps put them out of my mind and onto paper. As a mama, the worst part is the wait leading up to the day because I don't know his care team. I've had to accept this and just pray that God guides the perfect care team to us. I loved this. I loved her sharing because we all feel this anxious. And it makes us feel less alone when we hear other people's stories. So thank you, Samantha. And I really hope the procedure went smoothly. That brings me to the last message I want to share. This one is from Ashley K. She offered this. If you ever need a topic, would you go over when to take your child to the pediatrician? I've been a nurse for 14 years, and yet when it comes to my kids, I second guess so much. I always seem to wait too long and then they need Augmentin, or I take them and nothing is wrong and they tell me just give it more time. So how do you know when to go? I share this note because I really mean it. Send me your topic ideas. I want to know what you want to know more about. Okay, the answer to her question is, I covered this one kind of when I talked about when to go to the ER in episode 6. But her question is when to go to the pediatric office. And maybe I should cover that in an upcoming episode because it really is a long list. I'll give you a teaser though, because this is definitely part of her question. Okay, when should you go to the pediatrician for a fever? Fevers are super common. So these are the ones you really need to worry about if a child has a fever and a rash at the same time, a fever for more than 5 days in a row, fever with absolutely no other symptoms, fever and one place on the body hurts, fever and they still look sick even after they've taken a medication, fever and they don't want to walk, move, or they have neck pain, and then fever and not vaccinated. That can make us a little nervous. This is quite complex. It's really never wrong to go to the pediatrician, honestly. I mean, that's why we're here. Beside fever, the list of the reasons to see a pediatrician is very, very, very long and includes even things like eating concerns, not gaining weight, losing weight, headaches that wake the child at night. I could go on and on and on. I think Samantha should come on the show and ask me her questions. I mean, she is a nurse. She'd be perfect. What do you all say? Keep listening. Send me your ideas and thoughts. And please help me by leaving a rating and review. It really, really helps for other people to find the show. For more from the Pediatrician Next Door, find me on the web at pediatriciannextdoorpodcast.com. If you've got a question about the weird things kids do, send an email to hello@pediatriciannextdoorpodcast.com for a chance to hear your voice on the show. I'm Dr. Wendy Hunter, and I'm the Pediatrician Next Door. This show is produced by Red Rock Music. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever it is you're listening. I'll be back next time with more.